Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today's video is going to be covering a slightly more lighthearted topic than the things I normally do. This is going to be focusing on heal and shield power and the search for a name for this stat. It's been around in the game for a few years now, but has never really received a name that I think is worthy of the stat. And so today's video, I wanted to talk about why I think it deserves more than just a purely descriptive name, and also what options I think could possibly exist for a stat like healing and shielding power. Now, this stat has been around, I want to say, since about Season 5 or so. There was a bit of time where Riot were experimenting with enchanter support scaling their utility off of ability power, gaining healing and shielding power increases based on their AP, and I believe a lot of those scalings still exist in the game. But generally speaking, that stat didn't feel like it belonged exclusively to enchanters. There was a lot of overlap with items that AP champions wanted versus items that enchanter champions wanted, and eventually Riot decided, you know what, we're just going to let you actively scale your primary stat by just slapping the words 10% increased healing and shielding power on items and letting you go from there. And generally, I think this has worked, and even works necessarily as a sort of scaling mechanism by saying, hey, you have this much percent healing and shielding power, that makes your heals and shields that much stronger. And generally, I think the stat has been very well accepted. The one problem I think a lot of us have had with the stat is its name. Percent heal and shield power is a mouthful to say in the best of circumstances, and it's definitely one of those things where a slightly less descriptive but maybe more flavorful name would be more accurate in order to sort of sum up exactly what it is the stat does and make it easier to talk about. As you can already tell by how many times I've had to say it in this video, percent heal and shield power is a long thing to say, and for a while people have sort of tossed around various different names and none of them have really ever stuck. And now for those of you who are about to say, why do you have to have a flavorful name for this that isn't percent heal and shield power? Certainly having a more descriptive name would be more useful for players because it more readily allows them to understand exactly what the stat is and what it does. And to you I would say, sure, that makes sense. But League of Legends has a very long and rich history of using euphemisms for stats that help explain what it does, but don't exactly explain what it does. Right, even back to season 1, the very beginning of League of Legends, you have a lot of very descriptive stat names. Attack speed, movement speed, magic resistance, they all pretty much do what they say on the tin. They make you more resistant to magic, move faster, attack faster, right? This all makes sense, and these are names that have sort of stuck around in their current forms forever and never gotten changed because they do what they need to do. However, there are also some legacy stat names that don't exactly make a lot of sense when you think about it. Attack damage, for example, it does do what it says on the tin and increases the damage of your auto attacks, but it also is used to increase the damage of some champions' abilities, which then would make you think it overlaps with ability power, but ability power doesn't always increase the damage of your champion's abilities. If I'm Zed, and I want to mostly do damage with my abilities, I would not build ability power, I would build attack damage, even though I'm not auto-attacking that much, right? Those are sort of abstractions that we've come to understand and interpret, and I don't think Riot are necessarily wrong for naming the stats the way that they have. I really don't. I don't know how you would abstract exactly what it is that attack damage does or exactly what it is that ability power does, but I think that those are still names that you've had to kind of learn over time exactly what that stat is and what it means. Even a stat like armor, for example. If I didn't know magic resistance existed, I would maybe assume that armor just meant general durability, and if I didn't know magic resistance was a thing, I would assume that I just build armor if I want to be more tanky in general, and then I would be wondering why I'm still getting blown up by the enemy Annie, right? Those are things that have essentially been forced to learn over time what those stats mean and what those names mean, and therefore I don't think that a descriptive keyword necessarily always matters. Right, I've even gone as far as to introduce lethality, which is completely undescriptive as to exactly what it does, right? Ability power and attack damage at least make some kind of sense, but lethality is a complete abstraction, right? It makes your champion more lethal. What does that mean? And while I might be able to imply, well, maybe it gives me like some kind of way of bypassing enemy defenses, that could take shape in a multitude of different ways if I didn't know what it does. Does it allow me to ignore enemy armor? Does it allow me to ignore enemy magic resistance? Does it mean I do percent health damage? Does it mean I ignore enemy shields when I'm attacking them? Does it mean I apply grievous wounds? There are a lot of different ways that you could take lethality as a name and what it does. And what it really does is it's flat armor penetration based on your champion's level versus the enemy champion's level. That's completely unintelligible for anyone just looking at the name of the stat. And so I think it's fair then to say that percent heal and shield power should have a name that sort of generally gives you an idea of what it is that it does, without necessarily saying exactly what it is and what it does, because I just don't think that there's a need for it necessarily. So now the biggest question, of course, is what is that name, right? And there are a couple of different things that I've sort of kicked around because it's not a very easy discussion to be had. I think that there are a lot of options, and some of them don't necessarily work. For example, naming the stat something like Vitality or Renewal makes it sound like max health or health regeneration, right? If you have 10% Vitality, that makes it sound like you're getting max health. 10% Renewal makes it sound like you're getting that much health regeneration. 10% protection sounds like armor or magic resistance, right? Not necessarily that you are healing and or shielding a target. I think that there are a couple of ideas that I've come up with that I think may work. One of which is invigoration. It sounds a little like a buff instead of necessarily a heal or shield, but it kind of works. You're invigorating your allies with heals, with shields, that sort of thing. It is a long word, but lethality is only one fewer syllable when you think about invigoration. It could easily be abbreviated as invigorate or just invig, something like that, right? You could easily find a way to abbreviate it to make it sound a little bit better. But maybe it's a little wordy. Grace is another one I considered for a little bit. It's generic, but it also is a little unspecific, and it also could mean things like movement speed. And so I think at the end of the day, the word that I've sort of fallen on for what heal and shield power could be called is safeguard. Right, so this indicates safety. It could mean shielding. The healing descriptor is a little iffy, but generally, what are healing and shielding champions doing? They are protecting their allies with their heals and shields. They are keeping them safe from harm. They are guarding them. Safeguard, I think, makes a lot of sense. 10% safeguard, for example, kind of is intelligible. It doesn't necessarily mean protection in the same way that like armor and magic resistance would make sense, especially not when that's a sort of a core stat and you look at armor MR and say, okay, well, those are my defenses, but what is safeguard? And it's sort of intelligible from there that could mean your ability to heal yourself or shield yourself or allies. So that's what I've come up with as a name. I would like to see Riot rename the stat either way, even if they don't like my idea of safeguard. I would love to see them rename the stat at some point because I think it just makes sense. I think it is a better way of keeping players more flavorfully invested in the game by talking less about raw statistics like my 10% healing and shielding increase and more about, yeah, I have a lot of safeguard built in right now, so I can really give you a big shield when you need it. I think that's kind of a more fun way of talking about the game, and also cuts out a lot of words that need to be said whenever enchanter itemization is discussed. But you guys will have to let me know what you think of this down in the comment section below. If you think that heal and shield power even needs a rename, let me know that down in the comment section below. If you have another idea for a term or a word that we could use to rename it, I would also love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments, especially what you think of my term here. I'm pretty happy with it, but maybe you guys think it's total BS. So again, down in the comments, guys, let me know your thoughts on this subject. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.